Welcome everybody into episode, I believe, 6 of Been on Our Mind. Thank you so much for joining us today and tuning in. Today I have a very special guest. It's my nutritionist, Marisa. I found her on Instagram. She is a certified holistic nutritional consultant who specializes in Candida overgrowth. She uses a holistic approach to help women get to the root of their Candida overgrowth and rebalance their gut microflora. Woo! That's a mouthful. So thank you so much, Marisa, for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. That was a very nice intro.
I fumble a little, but that's all right. So I always start off the episodes with a general question, and I'm curious to know what has been on your mind.
What's been on my mind? Lots of stress and mindset work has been on my mind lately. I think it's probably because it's just stuff that's been going on with clients and also in my personal life as well. I feel like that's why I love doing what I do, because my clients are struggling with, either I have struggled with myself or I'm currently kind of going through something similar. And so that's kind of been the topic over the last few months.
That's a pretty big topic. And I'm sure that I feel like I kind of want to unpack that further into our journey of this episode together, if that's all right with you. So we'll just bookmark that, because obviously you work in an area that many people might not be familiar with. And that's why I'm having you on here today, because I myself have been on this journey of healing my gut with you now I realized today it's almost a year. Like, we're in August and we had started in November of last year. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah, we've been working on that together for a while, and there's a lot to unpack there, and people are curious. I've tried to educate them, but I want the expert. I want the person with the knowledge to come and give us a little taste. So in order to start, where did you study?
Yes, where did I study? I went to the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. So that's the longer version for CSNN. And so it's in Kitsilano here in Vancouver. I have a diploma in natural nutrition, and their program was really cool because they also offered a holistic culinary certificate. So I got to learn the ins and outs of making ferments and kombucha and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was really cool to get that hands-on experience. So that's kind of where I got my designation, but I'm currently taking lots of continuing education courses and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we'll ever stop learning because I just love nutrition so much, but that's kind of like the groundwork that got me to where I am today.
Okay. What kind of, I'm just curious, what kind of continuing education courses are you studying right now?
Yeah, so there's 2 schools in Vancouver, for holistic nutrition. So there's the one that I went to, and then there's also IHN, which is the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. I had a very hard time choosing which one to go to. And I now realize that the other school, they actually have a really awesome continuing education program. And even though I didn't graduate from there, I just recently took their supplementation and clinical practice course, which was of course I learned about supplements at school, but this got down to the nitty gritty of every type of supplement for every ailment. And it was just way more specific than the knowledge that I had at my previous school. And so it's always good to also get refreshers on a lot of things. When it comes to nutrition, I'm sure you realize this as well. It's there's just so much information to know all the time that it's always good to get reminded of things. So that's a course that I just recently took. And then I have a homeopathy one that I'm going to take in the spring as well, which I've always been very interested. But herbs are just I go on forever about the amazing benefits of herbs. So I'm excited to learn more about that too.
Oh, that's exciting. I love that you had the opportunity close by to actually be able to branch off and continue that education, especially within the supplements and everything like that. So there's, as I know, and there's a lot that I've used, and you even know that there's way more. What are some supplements that actually, before we get ahead of ourselves, what is Candida?
What is Candida? Well, Candida is a single-celled fungus, sugar fermenting yeast, that lives in our gut microbiome in normal, healthy amounts. And it gets an opportunity to overgrow and become a pathogenic organism due to certain dietary and lifestyle factors. So a lot of those ones I'm sure that you and I have talked about are antibiotic use, stress, the birth control pill, anything that's going to upset that ecological balance within our body gives Candida a chance to grow and thrive and become pathogenic. And that's because it's inside of all of us. So really, we can all be at risk if certain things kind of happen in our life, and it happens, right?
Yeah. So how does someone generally identify that they have a Candida overgrowth?
The symptoms can range from mild to moderate to very severe. The key sort of mediator there is how well your immune system is functioning. So some people, if they have really strong immunity, they might not actually have that many symptoms. It could be very mild, a lot of IBS-like symptoms, anything that's kind of out of norm for them, or it could go as far as to physically seeing fungus on your body. So you could have dandruff, you could have athlete's foot, eczema, anything that's kind of showing up in the skin that's kind of out of norm for you could be rooted in Candida. And so in my ebook, I have a pretty comprehensive chart that kind of outlines every body system and every single symptom that could possibly be related to Candida. And so if you look at that and you're wow, I have, 10 of these really common symptoms that are related to a fungal overgrowth, you might want to, explore either. You can go based just off of your symptoms, if they are really obvious and assuming you have Candida, or if you're one of those people, I'm one of those people who kind of does need to get a test done to see for sure that I have that, to kind of give you that motivation to actually invest in a program. Testing can be great because there are different types of strains of fungus as well. The Candida albicans strain is the most common, but there are other types of strains or fungus that can kind of all be overgrown in our body as well that do produce a lot of the same symptoms. But like I was saying before, some people do like to know which specific strain they're taking so that they know specifically that, X approach is going to work for them, if that makes sense.
How would one get tested then?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to get tested for Candida. So the way that I was diagnosed with Candida was through a naturopathic doctor who did a live blood cell analysis, which was really cool because basically he pricks your finger, takes blood, and then puts it under a microscope, and you're able to see everything that's going on in your body. So I didn't just have Candida. I also had other types of fungus and mold and parasites going on in my body too. And because of all of that, it also showed that my liver was not functioning very well and that my immune system was just not working at all either. And so that's another cool thing too about testing is that it does tell you what else is going on in the body aside from just Candida, which for a lot of people there is usually multiple different things at play and other bodily organs that do take a hit when there is a pathogen overgrown in your body. So that's the one that I'm the most familiar with because that's how I was diagnosed, and several of my other clients have been diagnosed that way as well. You can also do urine or stool or other types of blood tests too. The one that I'm the most familiar with is called the OAT test. So it stands for Organic Acids Test, and it's a urine sample that's done through Great Plains Lab, and it has markers that will tell you if you have fungal overgrowth. It also shows bacterial imbalances and markers for mold. I think there's almost 80 plus markers that they have on this test, but it's very accurate for diagnosing Candida. They also have a comprehensive stool analysis too, which has a bunch of different markers and will show Candida and other types of dysbiosis as well.
Okay. So there's quite a few different ways that someone can go about, if they're curious and they think that they have whichever symptom, and that's really good to know.
Many things that they have to, they have to go through either nutritionists or functional doctors per se. It's usually you can't get these tests done through a medical doctor.
Okay.
I mean, we could probably talk for an hour about this, but most medical doctors don't really see Candida as being a medical diagnosis. And so if you are interested in this type of testing, you're going to want to kind of go down that holistic route and work with somebody who does more of this type of testing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And it kind of makes me want to go down that road and unpack that a little bit further to know your perspective and what you have to share about in that realm of things.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because this is also something that's coming up in my practice lately too, is that when I first started, I was like, oh, like testing isn't required. Like if you've got all the markers and the symptoms, like we can just go ahead and like do the program, which usually works. Like I would say like 8 times out of 10, but there's always like 1 or 2 people where something happens and we're like, okay, well, something's not working. And then we go get the test done and we find out, well, this person doesn't just have Candida. They have, either parasites or bacteria or mold. And if any one of those things are going on in the body and they're not being addressed at the same time as having Candida, just a Candida approach isn't always going to work if there's, something else in the body that's driving that yeast infection or kind of further disrupting your ability to like get better, if that makes sense. So I do think that there is a time and place for testing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I know.
It's a lot. And it's so curious because it's like how a lot of people, they just don't know where to go. Right. But thankfully, like there are tests, there are people that we can talk to about these things, that these imbalances that we feel within our bodies, and we can figure them out. And there is hope, essentially. My next question for you is, can you explain, because you have a holistic approach to your practice. Can you explain what that means and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm sure like every single person that I work with, that I talk to, has had a similar experience in going to the doctor and explaining their story and feeling like they didn't really feel like they were heard. And the medical system likes to like isolate your symptoms. Like they don't really see the human body, like the mind and the body, as being connected. Like they just sort of treat a symptom. Mm-hmm. Whereas like the holistic way of helping people is we see that whole person as a whole. The mind and the body are connected, mm-hmm. like through our gut-brain axis. And we don't just look at like helping you manage or get rid of your symptoms. Like we're looking at every realm of your body, like your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, like literally everything, like how stress plays a role. Like we look a lot on the lifestyle stuff, because it's like you can be eating the healthiest diet in the world. You can be eating the healthiest diet in the world. You can be taking all of these supplements, but if you don't have a healthy lifestyle, if you're not moving your body, if you're not addressing your mental health and all that kind of stuff, like all that other stuff isn't going to work. And so I feel like there's a lot of like this simple baseline work that you have to like do with people in order for them to succeed. Like going back to that stress piece, you're chronically stressed out and you're eating kale salad every day and having a smoothie in the morning for breakfast and taking all these supplements. It doesn't matter, because that cancels it out. And so as a holistic practitioner, we're looking at every realm of a person's body and figuring out where there are imbalances so that that person can be in a state where they can heal, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's a question that's coming up into my mind is like, I'm kind of losing it, but more so, that's what it is. When like stress on somebody's body, because you mentioned briefly, you did kind of drop it, just the gut brain axis. I heard you mention it. And I know it's a pretty hefty topic, but can you speak to that?
Yeah, this is like kind of the root of me and like my irritable bowel syndrome. It's rooted in that dysregulated gut-brain axis, and that's kind of how our mind and our gut are connected through the vagus nerve. And I feel like people who have been through trauma, basically that can kind of lead to somebody's body being more comfortable sort of being thrown into that fight or flight response. So I should explain like that piece first. So like with our nervous system, we've got our fight or flight response, which is like what gets turned on when we experience a perceived stressor or go through trauma. And then we've got our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. So basically what happens to people such as myself who have been through trauma either in their childhood or teenage life or even as an adult, that has a profound effect on your nervous system function for the rest of your life. And so that can dysregulate your gut-brain axis, so that basically whatever is going on, like if you're in your fight or flight response, your rest and digest is shut off. And so everything that's going on in your gut can take a hit from what's going on in your brain, if that makes sense. And so basically that can come down to even just our thoughts as well. Like if we have any negative thoughts, like on a daily basis all the time, and you pair that with maybe going through trauma and you're being easily triggered every single day, your gut's going to take like a hit from that. And so that sort of piece, like managing stress and working on your mindset, practicing gratitude, meditating and getting a really good morning routine, like all that kind of stuff plays a really big role into like getting you in that mindset where you can heal, like going back to that like holistic piece, right? If we're sort of stuck in a negative mindset and not really taking care of ourselves, then that affects our gut, and that also affects our ability to like get to where we want to go on our healing journey as well.
It's funny because we had our meeting, I think it was yesterday for myself, and you asked me if I was feeling burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't notice until like last night and this morning that I am. I cried in a past episode. It's fine, guys. I cry here.
Great space.
So, stress on the body. We are doing our thing. We're eating the things. We're trying our best. There's things coming at us when somebody feels burnt out in their healing journey, when they're like, I'm doing everything that I should be doing, but the world is so hard. What the heck? Like, where does, I guess my question is like, what are your teachings of that you're learning within your mental health, mindset, gut health, all of that kind of aspect? Like, what are your teachings?
I think what I've realized is that it comes down to like being consistent with doing something every single day. Like even if you are exhausted, if you can wake up and do one thing for yourself, you have something to be happy and like proud of. And I think that that's one thing that like when we kind of start, whenever we get like burnt out or we feel like nothing's working, and then that kind of creates a lot of like negative mindset. And then for a lot of people such as myself, we might fall back into old patterns of coping or, negative beliefs and all that kind of stuff. And like a way to get out of that is to have something that no matter what's going on in your life, you do that every single day. So that's something that I feel like every person, it's going to be totally different, like for every person. And like for myself, like I find I fall off of that stuff very easily because I'm so prone to like doing what I used to do, that in my previous life that used to keep me safe. And my nervous system thinks that that's what's going to keep me safe. But really, there are way more positive things that I could be doing for myself on a daily basis. So let's use meditation for an example. If you're stressed out, something happens, a crisis happens, is that when you start meditating? Or do you meditate every single day to build resilience to the stress so that when the stressor hits, you're like, I'm already primed for this. This is what I've been doing every single day. I'm better able to handle the stressor because I've been practicing stress management. So it's like, that could be it. It could be journaling. It could be going for a walk. It's like whatever you can do on a daily basis that despite all the chaos going in your life, like you've got a way to take care of yourself and disconnect, and something that brings you joy so that you can remain positive. Mm-hmm. Really, that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it can be so easy with like the restrictiveness. And I know that with yourself as a coach, like a consultant, certified nutritionist, like you very much practice. You said the other day to me, it was like, now you're instilling more of an 80-20 approach, because the stress factor for somebody just meeting those healthy goals can be really challenging. So yeah, I think it's really important to be mindful. It's really important to slow down. And sometimes it's easier to like forget about doing those daily tasks.
So easy. It's so easy. And that's why it's like building a habit and changing your lifestyle is the hardest part of any kind of healing journey. It's like, that's kind of where I got to a point where I was like, okay, I got the food stuff down pat. Like I can eat kid friendly for the rest of my life and be fine. But lifestyle stuff, it was always kind of like I was talking about with that resistance that a lot of us feel like when we've been through stuff before, if we've got something that we're used to coping with, like whether that be stress eating or drinking alcohol or smoking marijuana, like whatever it is, like at one point in your life that probably served you really well and got you through whatever it was that you needed to get through. But presently, when you're trying to change your life, that's probably not serving you anymore. And to actually change that and put that into practice, it's hard. Even coming from me, I'm like, it's something I'm working at on a daily basis. And so maybe for me, the diet stuff is easy. Maybe for you, it's not. Maybe for the other person, it's not. Maybe that's the thing we struggle the most with, right? Like we're all totally different in terms of like where our comfort level is like with change. And I love that you brought up the 80-20 rule, because that's something that I've always had a non-restrictive approach, but there's that fine line between like being non-restrictive, but also making sure that my clients are getting rid of their Candida. Because it's like, if we go too far into the non-restrictive, then, you know, we're not really getting anywhere. And so I've started using that 80-20 rule, which basically means like 80% of the time, like you stick to your plan, you eat on the food list, you take your supplements, you do everything you need to do. 20%, you give yourself some leeway to like eat off of your plan. And I've noticed that this really helps with people's mental health, because it gives them space to breathe when they're out with their friends, or they're at a barbecue, or they are somewhere where they're not able to be in full control of what they're eating. And that usually is what creates food anxiety. You know, we're like, oh my God, what is going to happen to my body and my mind and my Candida if I eat something that has dairy or this or that? And seriously, like I've been through it myself. Like I've had mental breakdowns over it, because I thought my entire cleanse was ruined. Like that is probably, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. Like,
that's why I'm laughing. I'm just like, I've been there.
Well, because you're just like, I don't want to, I'm spending all this money and all these supplements, and my practitioner, I want to let her down. I would like this. There's so much going on that like, it's like you end up being in the fight or flight response when you eat the food anyways. And so it's like, okay, if we could just be calm and tell ourselves like, I have 20%, use that 20% when you're eating out, let yourself have it. What's also going to happen is let's say you've got a craving for ice cream, for example, and that craving is driving you nuts. This happened to me on my cleanse, but it was with beer. I was like watching everybody drink beer around me, and I was like, I just wanted to drink beer. And I felt so restricted that it was so hard for me to continue with my cleanse. That I've had this happen with clients before too. And I just say to them, just have it. Go on the weekend, go have the burger, whatever it is, the ice cream that you're craving. Tell me how you feel afterwards, like the day or right after it happened, and then tell me how you feel on Monday when you go back to sit and start your plan again. Every single time I've done this, it feels like they've released the restriction. They've gotten it out of their system. They tell me they did make them feel good, that they don't want to have it again for a long time, and that they're even more motivated to get back to their cleanse. So it's like, really, it's like all that stress could just be eliminated if we just gave ourselves, like we just took pressure off and said, this is okay. This is okay. We can do this. We can drive on. Like, it's like, I think it's that all or nothing belief system of like, if I deviate from my plan once, I've ruined all my progress. And like, that's not true. Like the only thing that's going to really set you back to where you first started is like, I don't know, eating that every single day, you know, before bed, like getting back on the ice cream every single day. Like, after a couple weeks of doing that, your gut might not be very happy with you, but one instance in a couple of months is not gonna set you back. Yeah.
Because there's like the good stress and the bad stress. And to me, that as you're speaking, I'm just like, that restrictiveness in no matter where or what we do it in. And also it's like the two extremes, right? Because you have like the super restrictiveness where you can be like, which can be triggering for people with like other eating disorders and other things like that. And then you have the other extreme where it's like you're having too much, which could also be it's a giant spectrum. So it's like we have to slow down and we have to allow ourselves that grace to be like, it's okay. We're only human, but I can still meet myself and I can still feed myself healthy. And it's not going to I won't be destroyed off that one, I don't know, not the French fries that I ate the other day.
I told you they didn't want the fries. They were like, we're done.
I learned my lesson. I was just like, oh my gosh, no, never again. But it's funny. And it's like, it brings you right back. But even today, I deviated a little bit from my plan. I had a quick lunch somewhere and it was a little bit of a craving, and I felt okay about it. And I think that was good because there's like, you mentioned joy in the past, and like, there's like, if you're eating something and you're stressed, that's not good. If you're eating something and it brings you joy, that's better. But it's like, once again, moderation.
It's all moderation. And like I said, the reason why I have this non-restrictive approach is because I did a strict cleanse like that, where I literally didn't have like an ounce of sugar. Like I'm talking like even veggies that have sugar in there, like carrots, beets, and things like that, which I know there are other practitioners that use this approach. But guess what happened? I did that 4-week cleanse. I got rid of my Candida. Mm-hmm. I was pale in the face. I was very sick. I lost so much weight. I was very malnourished, and I had such bad food anxiety coming out of that cleanse that eventually I swung the other way. So it was like one of my teachers at school referred to it as like a pendulum swing. It was like over here being super restrictive, and then you're over here like drinking beer and eating McDonald's every day. And so when you're over here, well, guess what happens after you pull out of that? I went back over here, and I was doing the complete opposite of what I should be doing because I didn't learn proper tools for how to like change my lifestyle. It was just a short cleanse, but that's not the purpose of Candida cleansing. The purpose of Candida cleansing is to learn how to eat a whole foods diet that makes you feel good, so that when you stop your cleanse, you carry those principles to your lifestyle moving forward, so that you're not susceptible to getting Candida overgrowth again. And so I missed that piece, obviously, because I was working with a naturopath, and they don't really give you a lot of the same tools that a nutritionist kind of gives you in doing a program like this. And so I did have to do multiple other cleanses and figure out other ways how to get rid of my Candida, because I felt like that was kind of like the starting point of my journey. If that makes sense. Yeah. I had wrong a couple times before I got it right.
Isn't that your experience with the naturopath, isn't it? Well, that's what brought you to your studies, essentially, right? So what there? Sorry, I'm like, what inspired you there to like take that step and everything? And
well, I was frustrated, and like naturopaths are amazing. I mean, no disrespect to them, but they are doctors, right? And they don't have time to make you this like beautiful custom protocol and meal plan and grocery list and stuff. Like they just don't do that. Like my naturopath just basically diagnosed me, which was very traumatic at seeing what was in my body, obviously. And then he gave me this food list, and he said, "Oh, just eat this way for like 6 to 8 months." And I at that point in my life, I didn't really know how to cook. Like I was just coming out of university, and it was so overwhelming that I tried my best to stick to it. But I remember I had this one day. It's so funny how some days of year pass, you remember like they were yesterday. And I just remember this day like it was yesterday, because it was like one of the worst days of my life. I was like, had set out to like start eating healthy. I wasn't going to go to the cafeteria anymore. And, I went and got like a really nice piece of salmon and some like potatoes and like fish or veggies. It was like a really healthy plate. And I was like so proud of myself for making this meal. And my tummy still swelled up like a balloon afterwards. And I remember calling my mom, and I was like, I'm just trying to do good by my body. Like, why is this happening to me? And it's because that was the start of my journey, right? We can't just have one meal and expect our Candida to be better. It was like, even though I was eating healthy, I still had Candida, and that's why I was reacting. So it was like, had that happen and to have the motivation to like keep going past that was so hard, because I had no coach. I had nobody like to message and say, hey, like, why did my tummy swell up like a balloon? I needed somebody to say like, hey, this was your first healthy meal. Like, imagine how much better you're going to feel after you have like 12 of these. Like there was no coaching aspect to working with doctors, because they don't offer that, or they don't have the time or anything like that. And so there was like multiple instances where that happened, and I didn't have the knowledge that I do now. And I was just like, this just doesn't feel like it's working. I don't have enough support. I wanted to learn more about what was going on in my body, because I'm also that kind of person that has a hard time sticking to something unless I really understand like why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so that is what led me to go to school for nutrition. And so I did have Candida still while I was in school for nutrition, and had the support of my classmates, my teachers, and my naturopath. So it was like I was able to ask questions to like basically anybody that was there all the time. Eventually formulated a plan and did another cleanse, but in a more non-restrictive, healthy way, and eventually got better.
I love that your path has inspired you to learn more about yourself, but not only that, to like learn about it so you can become that coach that you didn't really have.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what it was. Like, I was just like, imagine how many other people felt like I did, like alone and isolated. That person that had to say that had 20 food sensitivities, had to bring their own food everywhere they went, or have meltdowns in the bathroom because you didn't have control over like the food that was being eaten at an event. Like everything my clients are experiencing or have experienced, like I went through at one point in my life, and it was so isolating that there was a lot of anxiety and depression around that time of my life too, because your friends and family don't understand why you're not eating so many different types of food either, right? And so going to school for nutrition and finding other people like me was like unbelievably life-changing. And even though there wasn't like another person in the class that had Candida at the same time, it was just like I could talk to them about Candida and they knew what I was talking about, and I was just like the most excited person ever. And then that's when I started my Instagram account, and I found other people that also had Candida, and I was like, I found this online community, and I was like, wow, imagine if I actually had this like a few years ago, like how cool that would have been. I meet so many people on there that are where I was when I first started, and it's just, it's really cool. And that's kind of like how I just have this, like I finally felt in that moment, like this is obviously what I'm meant to do in life, is help people with Candida, because it's just like, why else would I have gone through all of that pain and suffering, you know? Like I'm such a strong believer in that everything happens for a reason. Even if at the time you have no idea why it's happening to you, eventually I feel like in months or years later, the light bulb is gonna go off and you're gonna be like, that's why that happened to me, because this was supposed to happen, if that makes sense.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I can see that. Like, you're like a ray of hope. It's true though, because I know that feeling. Like I've been there as you've experienced me, like feeling so disheartened, and you're like, I don't want to say at war, but that's the only thing that's coming to mind, is like, you're almost at war with your body, because like, you're like, anything you eat might be causing you issues. And you're like, what the heck? And then when you find someone, it's just, it's
a very frustrating process to have to go through. And that's why, coming back to that stress and mindset, like I did probably 1 or 2 cleanses and I felt better, but I just always felt like there was just something that wasn't getting addressed. And for me, that I did start seeing a therapist, like kind of around the same time I was in school for nutrition. And that's kind of when I learned more about the gut-brain axis. And she was telling me, like, you live chronically in your fight or flight response. And at that point in my life, I was so out of, like, my mind and my body were not connected. Like, they were totally unconnected. And so, like, also I find it's, like, super helpful to work with a therapist who can weigh in on that piece too, because, like, there's so much healing that needs to happen with your nervous system and your mindset and stuff too, in order to be able to heal from Candida. Like, if you are somebody that has been through stuff in your past, or are more prone to stress and anxiety and stuff like that, like if you're chronically living in that heightened state of anxiety, like your body's not in a state to heal either. And so that was something that, once I started working on like cognitive behavioral therapy is what I did with her, I started to get stronger and way better, and my gut eventually got way better and stuff too. And for me, that was kind of at the root of why the Candida just wasn't really going away, if that makes sense. And so, I just wanted to point that out too, because I noticed that that's something that's not talked about enough, like the connection between stress and anxiety and just gut health in general.
Yeah, they're all really deeply interconnected. And as I know that you've mentioned to me before, that our gut health is, correct me if I'm wrong, but 80 to 90% affects our mental health.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the serotonin, right? So it's like 70 to 80% of our serotonin is produced by our gut bacteria.
Okay.
I remember you and I talked about that once, because I remember you messaged me at the start of the program and you were like, when is this symptom going to get better? And I can't remember if it was anxiety or something like that. And I was like, just wait, it will get better. It will get better. And that's like a few months later, and you're like, my mood is so much better. And I was like, there's the serotonin.
I remember that. Yeah. Okay. So it's the serotonin, but either way, that's within your gut health. It's the health. Yeah, it's like the happy, healthy gut bacteria. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you've mentioned about like the fight or flight response, because I know for myself, I've been diagnosed quote unquote, by my therapist, saying that I've been in my freeze response since I was very young. And when you're talking about like that resistance towards like, you know, the something good or whatever, whether it's food or whether it's like playing an instrument, to me, that's how I feel. Like, I'm like just putting this together as we speak, but I'm like, so that's like the nervous system being like, this is unfamiliar. I'm not okay. So therefore I cannot move forward, but yet you're like reaching for it. And yeah, that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it's something that I'm actually working through in my own healing journey right now, because I feel like with that other therapist I was working with, like CBT is all in the mind.
Yeah.
Like I've never done the body work. Like I've never gotten into like the root of my trauma, which I feel like, again, could lead me down the road to having health issues again. Like I just feel like there was more to do. And for me, it's the lifestyle stuff. It's being consistent with exercising and journaling and practicing gratitude, meditating, everything that I know is good for my nervous system, which I'm now learning. I have that mental and physical resistance towards change, and doing an exercise that I know is going to be really good for me. It's because my nervous system feels safe and comfortable doing what it used to do. It likes to be in that hyper aroused state, stress eating. To me, that's like, no.
Because it's familiar, right?
My nervous system's like, nope, we've been stress eating and being lazy for like 5 years. Like, we're good. We don't need any of this meditation stuff. So whenever I try to change, it's like I'm being pulled in 2 different directions, and then I never end up following through. And then that creates a shame and guilt cycle. And then I stress eat, and then I have negative. And then it's like you're on this hamster wheel again. And you're like, how is this happening? I'm trying to just be a better human. And that's why. It's because like that, there's so much roots in how I used to cope. And, you know, maybe I saw that's how my dad coped, or that's how my mom coped. And there's family origins there. And so there's so much that comes into why people can't succeed, that if you've been trying to do it on your own for a long time, I do think that that's the time to invest in professional help, so somebody can explain to you why it is that you're doing what you're doing, because that validation is so unbelievably powerful. At least that's something I've experienced in my life, to have a professional say, hey, you went through X, Y, and Z. This is how you're coping. It's normal. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm normal, you know? Because when you're doing this health journey on your own for so long, you have no idea why you can't commit to your program or why you keep falling back into old patterns. So to have somebody just sit there, resonate with you, tell you what's up, give you a plan, so unbelievably powerful. And I'm sure you've experienced something similar in working with a therapist, and possibly me as well.
Oh, most definitely. It's that acknowledgement, right? The acknowledgement that like your struggles are valid and your trauma it happened, and it's the way you're feeling is valid. And then it kind of gives you like this new plateau of like, wow, I'm not by myself. There are people in this world that get me, that have experienced, they may not have experienced exactly the same thing, but they have experienced something similar. And so therefore we can have like a connective sense of empathy for each other. But what was coming up too is like that we're having to retrain our brains to trust that it is safe to go towards these meditation tools, and like myself, it's funny because like I'm a certified yoga practitioner, Reiki practitioner. Like I know my tools, I've had them for years, but often because of this nervous system, because of what has happened through my childhood, it just, even though my tools are there and I know that they're there, your natural tendency, because it's so familiar, wants to stay stuck essentially. And it's like, we have to build that momentum, and that comes back. We're coming full circle here, where this is where the holisticness is, because it's back to those everyday actions, as you mentioned earlier.
It's all about feeling safe though. And through trauma, you probably didn't have a safe environment at home, or, you didn't learn how to trust yourself, or maybe your guardians or whoever, so many different aspects there. And I think that's what kind of goes back to the whole nervous system thing. Like, we choose something that's known, that used to make us feel safe. And then when we try to threaten that with meditating, the nervous system's just like, whoa, no, like, we can't do that. So it's almost like there's so much inner work that has to be done within yourself, so that you can internally have that confidence and trust in yourself to be able to branch out. And that's something that I've started doing in my own healing journey, which I don't know if you follow Dr. Nicola Pera on Instagram.
No.
But she's called At the Holistic Psychologist, and she has a book called How to Do the Work. And she talks a lot about, she refers to this as self-sabotage. And basically, what I was talking about with the negative coping behavior. So for me, that's stress eating. I'm not doing my body good by doing that, but it's a known coping mechanism for me. And she said the best way to bring yourself out of that, to create that self-trust that we've been talking about, is through keeping one small daily promise to yourself. And it has to be something that is so simple that you can be proud of yourself for doing that. You're like, oh, I woke up today and I drank my water. And then you wake up the next day and you drink your glass of water. And you're building that trust within yourself, which then makes you more open to trying new things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Building it slowly versus change it all overnight. That's impossible.
Exactly.
That's impossible. What is the most common ailment that you have treated with
Candida?
Yeah.
It's so hard to nail down just one. I do feel like the most common symptoms of Candida overgrowth are definitely brain fog, bloating, irregular bowel movements, and also yeast infections, I would say, are the most common symptoms or conditions that are the most commonly affected by Candida. But like you were saying before, Candida presents differently in everybody. So there's usually, I would say, everyone's got their top, 3 to 5 symptoms related to Candida that they sort of identify with the most. But I would say those would be the top ones for sure.
Okay. What is the most common misconception that you've seen about gut health?
I think maybe tying this back to Candida is, I think a lot of people think that they can heal from, whether it's Candida or any other type of, health struggle, just through, making small dietary changes or taking supplements. And I think this kind of goes back to the whole theme of this podcast, is that there is so much more that goes into healing than just, following a Candida diet or taking supplements. There's stress and emotions and lifestyle factors and so many different things that are playing a role into why you may not be getting better. And so I think that is a really big misconception that a lot of people don't understand, because we have that Western medicine view of just take a pill.
Yeah.
Why would you need to do all this work when you can just take a pill and then you'll be good, right? We're kind of going against the grain, and we're saying no, there are all these other things that are affecting your life that may be prohibiting you from feeling better or maybe making you feel this way. And so I think there are many people that come to me that understand that. And there are a lot of people that I feel don't fully understand the power of actually changing every aspect of your life and how that's going to really help you get to where you want to go,
Yeah. Well, it's all there. If you look at the medicine wheel within my school teachings, it's also a holistic approach, and it has the 4 quadrants, and it's mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. So you do have to touch base on each aspect of the self, essentially, in order to change. I had another question, but it kind of floated away, and that's okay. Bye-bye question. We'll see you another day. Is there anything that you're feeling called to share that people need to know right now?
That's a good question. I feel like we talked about so much stuff today in regards to the mindset and the stress piece. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to
My
share.
question came back.
Oh, what was it?
So in terms of because we know that both factors play very important roles within the gut and brain axis. So you have your food and your lifestyle. Would you say it's like a 50-50 within like percentage wise? Like how would you describe that to somebody who's like first coming to you and being like so that they can understand the importance of the impact of like all of their choices, if that makes sense?
I feel like that's the one thing that is the hardest thing for a lot of people to understand is what is balance, what is moderation? Like, how do I get all of these realms kind of going into my life? And I think it's starting with like the base work first, like daily movement, drinking filtered water, like, you know what I mean? Like there's all these like little things that you can kind of start with, that once you have those down, you can then move on to like bigger, more complex things. So it's kind of just like walking upstairs, like, you're doing like the baseline stuff first, and then you're getting higher and higher up. So eventually, yes, when you get to the top, I feel like it is an equal balance of like managing your stress, moving your body, eating healthy, going out for food and drinks with your friends on the weekend. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's space for everything in our life. We just, like, let's go back to that pendulum swing. Like, we have to be in the middle. If we're too far in either extremes, we're not happy, our body's not happy. And so I think like, once you've eradicated your infection, which does unfortunately require being a little bit more restrictive, the goal is to eventually get you to be in the middle of that pendulum so that you're not susceptible to getting sick again.
Okay. And then, so going back to our previous question that I asked before that one, is there anything right now that's like on your heart that you just feel like people need to know within? I know that we talked a lot about the mindset and everything like that, but yeah.
I think a lot of people with Candida think that they have to live like this forever. And that's a common question that comes up like every time I put up a question box on my, Instagram, or that I get in my DMs and stuff. Like, do I have to eat this way forever? I'm like, well, I have to live like this forever. And like, for anyone listening, I just want to let them know that that's not true. Like, if you've been trying to, go about this healing journey on your own for a long time and you haven't been getting anywhere, odds are there are lots of root cause factors that are not being addressed, whether that be stress, unresolved trauma, mindset, mold, all those things that we talked about today that might be getting overlooked, which might be holding you back. And if you don't like break out of that and you stay sitting in that belief system of like, I'm never going to get better, I'm going to have to live like this forever, like that might be holding you back. And so I think that there's a time and place, like we were talking about for testing, there's a time and place for investing in yourself and working with somebody who can help you work through all of the mindset stuff and help you get to the root of like why you feel stuck, basically.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, we're getting closer to the end. I do have a couple of other questions, though. Speaking of inspiration and mindset and things like that, what kind of things do you gravitate towards that bring you joy within your practice?
This is a very, very heavily loaded question.
I'm sorry.
And no, you're hitting, like, it's like, I talked about this on my story today. Whenever there's something that you're being called to do in your life, it keeps showing up and showing up and showing up. This is something I'm working on currently in my life, is working on what brings me joy, because that used to be for me playing sports. Like, I played hockey on lacrosse competitively my entire life. And after university, I've been still on the search for that. Like, I found nutrition, but then I turned nutrition, my passion, into my job. Yeah. And now all of a sudden I'm in this place where my job is my entire life, and I need to find something else where that brings me that passion and joy that's not nutrition. Because right now I'm like, oh, I'll just read a nutrition book for, to relax, and then all of a sudden I'm taking notes and responding to clients. So I'm just like, I feel like I'm still trying to search for that activity that helps me disconnect from my health or my job or anything like that. I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I'm slowly, I feel like, doing the necessary steps to work on that, like journaling, practicing gratitude, I'm meditating, talking to people about it. And I I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm going to get there. I just don't quite know what that activity is yet.
I have faith that you'll find it. And I like that I did ask you the question and that you are currently like ruminating. And I also like that you did mention a couple things that were coming into my mind as I was asking the question is you're journaling, you're meditating, and you mentioned a third one there, talking to people about it. But those are the first steps to working towards that. And some people, we don't know what our joy is. And I did the same thing where I was feeling kind of like stuck within like everything, and then I stopped. I mean, stopped by like slowed down. And then I journaled and like sat with it. And finally it comes. And when it does, it's great. But
I want to get there eventually at some point, but it's not easy. Like when all that stuff stops, you're in your adult life, and I work from home too, right? So that's a little isolating as well. And so to like actually get out into the world and do stuff and figure things out, it seems, when you build something out to be a lot bigger and more in your head, I think that's what I've been doing. I've just been trying to be comfort in my own home, and I need to explore the big wide world.
I have a question. You mentioned adulthood. So my question is, what was it in your childhood other than playing sports and other than nutrition? What was it in your childhood that brought you joy and that brought that spark?
I think it was for me like the like community aspect of like being on those sports teams, like always having like my therapist referred to it as a tribe. I think that, yes, it was the sports, but it was also the tribe of like my girls. Like, what I mean? Like I had this group of girls that I spent like, I was playing hockey. It was like 6 or 7 days a week that I was with these girls, and these girls were my best friends. Like they were like my family for years and years and years. And it was that community. I think that's what I'm really missing. And even though I have that online with, nutrition and stuff, I need something else that's like, I don't even know how to explain it, but I know that that's what I'm looking for. I just don't know how to like regain that same community and friendship that I got from playing sports and how that made me feel in adult life. Because right now my body is totally broken from playing all the sports that I played, that, finding another sports team is really like doable for me. So I'm just like, how do I get that community tribe in adult life?
I think you're probably speaking to the hearts of so many people right now, and especially because of COVID and everything being moved completely online. Like there is a huge aspect of community that's missing. And I really hope that you do find it, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be through sports, because that might be a little hard on your body, as you just mentioned. So hopefully it comes like maybe like a knitting circle or something. Oh gosh.
I love that. It's so funny. But yeah, no, I definitely do think that any retired athlete goes through something like this after they've finished college. They're like, now what do I do with my life? Maybe I'll pick up golf. This is something I've been exploring, and my boyfriend loves golf. And so he's always just like, why don't we golf? And I'm like, well, I need to commit to my physio exercises first, and then we can golf. So I feel like I might have a slight inkling about what I need to do. I'm just not doing it.
I sense some resistance. Just kidding. Oh, goodness.
You're speaking very loudly right now.
I do not trust. Must build the trust. Meditate. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Oh gosh, it's been so great having you.
I think we have always had that same emotional, spiritual connection about our past and our Candida and everything that we go through in life. So yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it's been really nice, and it was nice to not completely focus on me this time. But even though I did share a little bit of myself in there and a couple tears, it's fine.
Stuff happens. There was something inside of you that needed to release, right?
Oh my gosh. That burnout aspect, but even it did need to be released, because like even as I'm speaking it now, I'm like, you're calm now. That's good. And like, sometimes you just need to be, like you said, need to be seen, basically acknowledged. And like, and that's my hope for this space. And I'm really thankful for you to come on here and share your story with us and your insights in order for others to be able to hopefully see that they're not alone and that there's help and support out there and there's folks that get you. Yeah. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us again on Been on Our Mind. And if you're interested in being a supporter of the podcast, please donate on Patreon. You can also find us on Instagram at Been on Our Mind podcast. And you can also find Marisa here on Instagram. If you want to tell us your handle there, Marisa.
It's at the Holistic Seedling.
Wonderful. There's a great community up on Instagram. Lots of people sharing great knowledge, and Marisa's one of them. Also, that brought me back. Your ebook. How can people find your ebook?
Yeah, so on my website, if you search holisticseedling.com, I do have a page that sort of explains what the ebook is all about. And then I have like my shop in there. But I will say I'm currently working on editing the book and coming out with a second edition because I've learned so much from my continuing education courses and all the ladies that I've worked with over the last like 6 to 8 months. And so I'm working on the second edition. And so just wanted to share that as well, because there's going to be a lot more information about a lot of the stuff that we talked about today that I've been, learning as we go.
That's really exciting. And when can folks expect to see that hit the interwebs?
Hopefully, I would say maybe September, October kind of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So not too far away. That's exciting. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. And I look forward to sharing that around once it reaches Instagram. Yeah. Thanks again for being here, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you.